Hello, it's Brent Leverage and Lean, and today is Monday, which means it's Macro Monday, and I can't think of a better way to start out your week than being more efficient and effective on your computer. And the best way to do that is use our latest macro. What kind of macro we posted this morning? Let me show you.
Alright, this is the macro we're dropping this morning. This is a Word macro, input box call macros, more buttons. If you create a lot of macros, you traditionally create a custom button for those macros. But if you create enough macros like myself, if you create too many buttons, it gets a little bit overwhelming and you ultimately become so inconsistent navigating to those buttons to call those macros. That's why we developed the input box call macros. This Word macro will display an input box allowing you to call a list of macros that are displayed in text, and then there is a leading number in front of that text that you can enter into the input box to quickly call those macros. Instead of having multiple custom buttons, you just have one, which makes you way more consistent navigating to that button to then call out those macros. And it's really easy to memorize those leading numbers so you get really consistent in calling all of the macros you have in certain applications. So if you've yet to see this macro in action, check out our See It in Action video here, and then navigating even further down here. Here is the code for this macro, and I did put out a call out in the red text here. The VBA code is the exact same across applications, so you can use this in Excel and Outlook. So technically I'm dropping 3 macros today. Alright, before we paste this code into Visual Basic, I do want to point out this first time using VBA. If you've yet to activate the Developer tab, update your macro security, and set up references for Leverage and Lean macros, you need to do that, and the good news is it's really quick and easy to do that. Let me show you by navigating to Word. In Word, we can navigate up to Customize Quick Access Toolbar, head down to More Commands. Within this pop-up, click Customize Ribbon. Then over here on the main tab section, you can navigate down, and you'll see the Developer tab is uncheckmarked. You can checkmark that and click OK. You'll then see a Developer tab exists. You can navigate, click on the Developer tab, head over to Macro Security. Instead of disable all macros with notification, go ahead and enable all macros. This is not recommended because potentially dangerous code could run, but in this video, I'm going to show you all the lines of code and exactly what this macro does. And the harm really lies in the fact if you try to run VBA code blindly, not knowing what it's going to do and finding out just by running it. I really wouldn't do that, and that's where you could really cause some problems. Alright, so now that the macro security is set up, we can navigate to Visual Basic. You'll see in Visual Basic, I already have some VBA code out here for this video to show you. But to set up references, you're going to navigate over to Tools and click References. And then by default, you should have these 2 references checkmarked, and you really don't need anything else. I just wanted to show you where the references are, so in later videos, you can start adding some of those in. Okay, if this is your first time in Visual Basic, you will not have a module set up, and to add one, you can simply go over to this black arrow and then click Module to add one, but we'll just use the module I currently have out here with the code that I wanted to show you today. But let's go ahead and paste in the code out on leverageandlean.com. So you navigate over to the code. I would recommend clicking between the code lines and the physical code itself, making it really easy to Control C, and then navigate back over to Visual Basic, where we can simply then make some room and then paste in this code. Alright, so let me show you more about this input box call macros macro. You can see there's not much code here. There's really not much going on, but it doesn't mean that it's not helpful and useful if you use a lot of macros. So you can see in the macro string here, this is what displays in the input box. You can see there's labels for the macros you're calling. I've actually have so many macros, I just kind of move over things in a tab to create almost a second column to then add in leading numbers to then continue to expand on this list. But then as you add labels and a number next to them, you can then start to use the action variable to then look for that number and then call the macros within it. So this is really the shell of what this macro looks like, but you can see in my real life example here that I'll show you, there is some actual macro labels and then macros that are being called, and you can continue to expand on this list. So let me show you this macro in action so you can really see what it's doing. You can see in Word I have a custom macros tab just to show you the difference of what listing out a button per macro looks like. And you can see with only 4 macros, this wouldn't be too complicated to do, but let's say you have more than 5, maybe 10 macros. You can start to see how inconsistent of where each button is. You have to navigate over to that. But on the Home tab, I created the button for the Call Macros. This is the macro that when clicked will display an input box. You can then see all of the macros listed out. You can then just enter in a number to fire this macro. I'm entering 1 to call the quick format button. Now, if you haven't seen the quick format button, I do have a page dedicated to that. And what happens is if there is nothing selected in the Word document, it will format the entire Word document. If you select specific text, it will just format that text based on predetermined formatting options in the VBA code. So with nothing selected, I expect this to format the entire document. I can then either navigate over, click OK, or I can just hit the Enter key and it will run this macro. Let me show you another macro running. You can simply click Call again and we can do quick text. And what the quick text macro does is it displays an additional input box, allowing you to then call text that you might be using frequently. And the cool thing about putting something like this in VBA code is you can use VBA to leverage dates and maybe other things that are dynamic based on the time of day and when you're running this macro. Right now I'm just putting in quick text just to have a filler, kind of like the shell for this input box call macros. All right, so let me show you the customize section here. I kind of showed you that. Like I said, there's not much going on. The concept is simple. You just have to expand on your strings to then pull in certain labels to then know what is associated with the leading number, and then make sure your mapping is correct by using the action variable to ensure the leading number and the label match what you want to run based on the number you enter into the input box. All right, so that's all I have for this Word macro, input box call macros. I absolutely want to know what you think of this one. Have you developed a different way to call macros if you use a lot of them? I'd love to compare to this one, maybe make another video. Thank you so much for watching. Stay awesome.
Thank you so much for taking time to view this video. I really do appreciate it. If you want to start using the macros seen in the video, I have a link in the description. If you could do me another big favor, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, stay updated on any new videos that I'm posting. Like us, follow us on all of our other social media channels, and as always, stay awesome.